Hello, my name's Susanne. Welcome to the 150th episode of Handmade, from the life of a knitting, singing, writing spinner. Today brings you the 15th ever English episode. So for those of you who don't know, every episode with a zero at the end from the Handgemacht podcast is an English overview episode where I try to talk about everything that I talked about in the 9 episodes before. Well, I don't actually talk about everything because you don't really want a 9-hour episode of the podcast. Or at least I suppose you don't want that. Anyways, I don't want to record a 9-hour episode of the podcast. I thought about what happened since the last English episode, and I'm actually not quite sure how long that time frame is, but I can see that it must have been sometime in May, and May, yeah, that's a long time. I'm still writing the exact same novel that I started in February, and I'm a bit cranky about it that I haven't finished it yet. On the other hand, I'm also rather proud that I'm still working on it, and it looks as if the end is near, though I've been saying that for month and month and month now. So my plan, the last plan, was to finish the novel in September. Then I realized, nope, not gonna happen. So I've extended my personal deadline to the end of October, which means that if I manage to write for about half an hour, 5 times a week, then I'll make that deadline. So that sounds much more realistic than my usual attempt of, okay, I'll do this stretch goal and I'll spend 2 hours of writing every single day, weekends, day in, day out. And if I fall behind, then I'll just push a little harder and things will be great and I'll finish the book in 3 months. I would have loved to, but it never happens. So if I look back at my statistics, I think I end up with about 600 to 700 words on average per day. So setting myself a goal of writing 2000 might be a bit too much. So that's the writing. What else? There was summer break, which was the usual crisis thing, because summer break always is. We painted the balcony, but I think I already talked about that because that happened in April. What else? I don't know. Lots of small, tiny things, not a lot of big things, which is good. Yeah. School has started just 2 weeks ago or 3. Yeah. I don't even know. I think it's almost 3 weeks. Yeah, and I have no idea if you can hear the sound of the traffic outside. I don't know why that's so loud. I closed all the doors and windows here, and yeah, this is the sound you get. I think I bought a new microphone since I recorded the last episode, but I'm not quite sure. And I just realized this morning that this is the 50th ever video episode of the podcast, and I'm still having a ton of technical difficulties all around. Somebody told me that there's a sound problem with the video on YouTube where at the end, when I'm talking while the music's going on in the background, it isn't really going on in the background and one can't really understand what I'm saying. I think I might know why that's happening. I still don't know how to prevent that from happening. So, for those of you who are technic geeks like me, the thing is this: what I think is happening is that I'm recording the sound in GarageBand and then I'm exporting it to iMovie. GarageBand is doing a mix, and that puts a compressor on the sound so that all the very soft parts are made a bit louder, and the louder parts are made a bit softer. So when I'm talking, my voice comes to the foreground, should, and then the once I stop talking, the music's pushed forward, so it goes up and down like a seesaw. And I think that the first mix puts compressor on it. The iMovie thing is mixing the whole thing again, and I don't quite know how to prevent that. And that puts compressor on the already compressed audio track. And then when I export that whole thing to YouTube, I'm pretty sure that YouTube does something to the sound as well. And so in the end, you end up with something that's compressed 3 times, and then you can't really distinguish between the what I'm saying and the music, because they're so intertwined and have gone up and down and up and down and up and down all the time, that results in everything being a little hard to get. I'm sorry. So next step will be to look into the preferences for GarageBand and iMovie and see if I can do something about that. The other thing would be if I were putting the music track on the whole video later, not export the already mixed audio track and then I'll see. As I said, I'm not quite sure if I can change it. It bugs me endlessly. And the other thing I had technical difficulties with was the recording kept stopping because the computer was overloaded, which bugged me like crazy because this is a fairly new computer. And yeah, I didn't buy the fastest one, but it's not the weakest one you can get either. And so I didn't understand why it was so hard for the computer to record audio and video in 2 different programs at the same time. And the other thing was that the USB C plugs kept falling out of the socket, and that happens all the time. And it's a known flaw of the nice, what's it called, Thunderbolt system for the Mac laptops. Yeah, so right now I'm hoping to prevent that by only having 2 programs open. So it used to be that I had a third program open where I would read my show notes from. So I'm no longer do that. So I'll always look over to the right side because I have my show notes there on my iPad. And the second thing is that I actually put something under the plug. So where the plug goes into the computer, I wedged my the case for my glasses underneath, and I hope that that will prevent the microphone from spontaneously falling out. It isn't really falling out, it's just, it looks fine, and the computer tells you there's no connection. So we'll see how that goes. Sorry to bother you with all those technicalities, but that's quite a big thing for me right now. And as I said, it bugs me because I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it and trying to fix things and couldn't. But last podcast recording went great, and I'm hoping that these changes that I made will do the trick. So I'll be talking about what I made over the past few months. I knitted. First thing on my list is a purple Komodo jacket, cardigan, sorry. Um, I'll talk a bit longer about it later. So for those of you who only get the audio, now every time I show a sweater or a blanket or something bigger on the podcast and I hold it into the camera, it actually comes between me, my voice, and the microphone. So the sound will change whenever I hold up. I'm trying not to move around too much, but yeah, this is another compromise because I'm sitting far away and bleh. I'm sitting away enough so that people seeing this on video don't see the microphone, but close enough that the microphone will still pick up my voice. So it's not, well, perfect. So, Komodo. So I'm holding a big purple blob into the camera right now. This is from Handspun. I bought the fiber at the Reverie meeting, I think in 2015 or 16, so a few years ago, and I spun that on the little jam. No, I didn't. That was spun on the Victoria. With the when I bought the lace fly and was all new, so I did a two ply. I had this is Malabrigo Nube, so I think it's merino, I'm not quite sure. And this is two ply that I spun on the lace flyer. And yeah, I had this yarn lying around for a while, and I wanted a very loose cardigan, lacy one to throw on over like t-shirts in the summer or something. And I spontaneously decided to cast this on, and then I was pretty much obsessed with it for a couple of weeks until I finished it. The Komodo is this is something that I think most German knitters have made at one point or another. So there's like a Komodo rave was going through a reverie at a point. And I never made it. The designer, Nicola Susan, something like that, she claimed that you can knit this without a gauge swatch and that it will fit anyways. So I can now tell you that, yeah, she's right. That's because the construction is really interesting. Not that spectacular, but interesting. So you start the whole thing like a triangular. It is a triangular shawl with sleeves. You start with the very small tab at the back of the neck, and then you increase, and so it's basically like a triangle. Um, and then you, at one point, you add, how do you do that? I think you add two stitches, and then you divide for the body and the sleeves. Yeah. So yeah, you knit on. So you basically go on knitting your triangle, but there's a point where you have divided off a few stitches for the sleeves, like here at this point. This looks like a raglan, and so you take all these stitches that are on the top of your sleeve and put them on waste yarn, and then you cast on like two or four stitches, as a very few. Put those aside, and then you knit downwards and complete your triangle for as long as you want. And then afterwards you pick up, you take all the stitches that you put aside and make them into sleeves. There's a fixed rate of decreases or increases, and I found that that's a rate of increases, or yeah, it's increases, and for the sleeves it's decreases. That rate usually works with a lot of different yarns and gauges, because I think it's like 2 every 6 rows for the sleeve decreases, and it's something like, I don't know, it's 8 stitches all around every 8 rows, something like that, for the rest of the garment. And since it's this triangle, and so it gets wider and wider and wider at the bottom, and it has these like triangular floofy things hanging in the front, and it doesn't close. So I'm not putting it on right now, but so it's very wide here around the shoulders, and it just falls open. So not much to tailor. So yeah, as I said, it's really easy to knit and it's fun because you can go, oh, I go, just stockinette, 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 stockinette. Oh, do increases, stockinette, stockinette. So it's pretty mindless, but has a bit of interest to it, and I found it rather fascinating to see how the whole pattern would come out and how it would fit. I haven't worn it yet because I'll tell you about my Me Made May later. I've been starting to just wear more clothes that I made myself, which means I'm wearing a lot of dresses and mostly skirts, or mostly the denim skirt that I made some years back, because that goes with everything, and it has these huge pockets that are so nice to have, and you can like carry everything around in there, and it's sturdy. Denim is really, really good material for a skirt. And so, since my silhouette these days is mostly like I'm wearing a really wide skirt, I don't want to wear a cardigan like that on top of that because that will like floofy white thing over another floofy white thing that will make me appear completely shapeless. So once I'll be wearing more jeans again, I think I'll wear that cardigan more often as well. So that was that. Um, yeah. Then I started a pair of toe socks because when I'm running, I'm usually wearing those Vibram five finger shoes. So those are like shoes that have little pouches for every toe. And when you want to wear socks in those shoes, of course, you have to have socks that have toes. Um, so I was looking at toe socks and found that they're either very flimsy and cheap, or they are wool and nice and sturdy and really, really expensive. And so I decided that I wanted to knit some for myself. And since my shoes are rather tight, I thought, oh, I'll just use light fingering yarn. I had a hard time finding some that was not all colorful and bright. I love colorful and bright, but I look a bit like a clown with these shoes anyway, and so I wasn't too keen on wearing like orange, yellow, green socks with those shoes. So I got some Regia 3-ply. I found that the yarn is discontinued by now, but I got two balls of it and started making toe socks. So the ones of you who see this on the video will find that, yeah, these might be toe socks, but there are no toes. I was following sort of at first the pattern Funky Fives, I think is the name. Um, and that has you, I think, start in the middle. So you cast on like, I don't know, 60 something stitches, and then you knit for a few inches in one direction, and you cast on with a provisional cast on. So then you can, next you make the toes, and then you knit the whole sock like toe up, only you don't start with the toes. You start in the middle of the foot, like here, then you knit a bit, so just so you have something solid to start with. Then you knit all the toes, and then you go back to where you stopped after the beginning and knit the rest of the sock. Now, me, I have done toe-up socks. I don't like them. We had a big discussion about sock construction a couple of months back. On the podcasting of Deutsch Folge, because I did that episode on sock construction, and there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, I love toe-up socks, and it's much easier to make them fit," and blah blah. And so the thing is, I've been knitting cuff-down socks for, let me think, 40 years, and I can knit them toe-up, and I can do all kinds of things, but it's just so much easier for me to make them fit when I start at the cuff. Right now, I'm pretty much in love with the Annie Fletcher's sock patterns, as you know. And so this time, too, I used the heel construction she does. So you start at the cuff, then you knit straight, then you do increases, which you can really see because there's this line that the increases make. Then you do a heel turn, which is a bit like the, what's it called? Peasant heel. In German, it's Herzchenferse, which is much nicer. It's a little heart heel. Um, and then you just go on decreasing like you started until you're back to the number of stitches that you need for the foot. Um, Next step for me will be to divide for the toes and determine how wide and long to make each toe. And that will take a bit of thinking. So now you might hear the fan of my computer come on. That usually bleeds through to the audio. I'm sorry, nothing to be done about this. I've tried not to tax the computer too much. Just let me see. Nope, nothing to be done about it. So next up, the computer will decide to stop working probably. So then I started a scarf for my son because he bought himself a fancy trench coat like thing with a hood, very, very cool and hip. And so he needs a scarf. So he doesn't like wool, but this time he agreed to try something that's cotton and wool blend 50-50, and he declared this to be soft enough to be wearable. So this is the pattern Bundled in Brioche by Stephen West, and I'm using a Lana Grossa yarn. I forgot the name, but it's the one with merino and cotton. So this goes nicely, and so since this is brioche, as the name hints at, and you do stripes. It's two-colored brioche, so one side has the mostly dark colors and the other has the lighter ones. And so you do 12 rows with two colors. Then you change one of the colors, like you can see here. I started with the dark blue, and then I did the dark gray, and then the middle blue. And on the other side, the stripes change later. So there's always something going on. It's really fun to knit, and I think I did a pretty good job at weaving the ends in while I was working on the scarf and doing it in a way that they won't show up too much. So I did Russian joints all through so that I'm hoping there won't be any unsightly ends sticking out. So this fan sound is driving me crazy, sorry. The other thing, I finished something. These are the vanilla, what did I call them? Handspun vanilla rib socks, another Annie Fletcher pattern. This is for those one who might remember one of those slightly insane projects At the again at the Revelry meeting in Regensburg, I started spinning this merino silk fiber that I bought at the Wolfschaf. But I think that this might be something that you can get at World of Wool. I'm not quite sure. And and now I'm not quite sure if I bought it at the Wolfschaf or at the Wollknoll. However, I started spinning that, thinking, oh, I'll just make a quick sock yarn. This is cable yarn, cabled yarn. Sorry, cable is the funny, isn't it? Cable is the German term. It's French, but yeah, we use it. So it's cabled, and this is something that Abby Frankenmont suggested to me when I took her spinning class at Backnang. And she said, you should try making cable yarn with the two, so you spin four singles. Then you ply two and two, as you apply two of them and then the other two. And then you take those resulting two plies and ply them with each other. So I have done cable yarn before where I spun in one direction, plied in the other, and then spun in the first, plied in the first direction again. But I was complaining that the resulting yarn is very knobbly and textured. And when I was knitting with it, it felt weird in my hands. Though when you actually see the fabric when it's knitted, it's all smooth and there are no bumps anymore. The bumps are only in the yarn, not in the knitted fabric. But she said, well, what you can do is you do the first round of plying in the same direction as you were spinning. And then you, at the end, you ply the other way around. And that gives a yarn that's pretty smooth. I don't know if you can see this. This doesn't look like cabled yarn, actually. It looks like it's it looks completely smooth. Doing that first pass of plying is not so fun. So I did the whole project on a spindle, and so I just spun away. Took me ages, and then I mislaid the fiber. I had pre-divided everything into 8 parts. So I took 100 grams. It's not quite 4 ounces. And I had pre-divided them, so I knew, okay, I'll just have this small portion of fiber to spin, and then I'm done with this part. And I was completely sure that I was making a 3-ply. And then suddenly I found another bag with more of the fiber and realized, oops, oh no, I was planning to do a cable yarn. So it took ages and ages and ages, and this was the project that was sitting in my purse. Usually, I was carrying it around and not working it. And then at some point, don't know quite, I don't quite know when, but I just pushed it and I worked on it. And so I worked, did everything on the spindle. So every time I finished a portion, I pulled it off the spindle, and then I wound flying balls so that flying would be easier. And I'm usually using a project bag to carry those the flying ball and the spindle around so that I can clip the project bag to my belt or something, and then I can handle the whole thing easier, and it's portable and I can take it with me. So then you end up with yarn, so you have those 2 plies that are plied in the same direction as they are spun. And those are pretty horrible to work with because you have all this twist stored up in the thread and it's going like crazy because they're way overplied. And then that yarn gets this slightly dead, flat look that it gets when you're trying to do a regular two ply and you're starting the wrong direction. For me, I don't usually see that I'm doing something wrong, but the yarn looks so stringy and flat and lifeless. So that's what you get at that intermediary stage when you do this cable yarn. So then I made more plying balls for the cabled yarn and apply that in the other direction and put really a lot twist in it. And still the yarn felt a bit flat and dead, but I'm pretty happy with the result. So um, not quite sure if I'll do that again, but because I've made my piece with regular um, cable yarn and with the bumpiness, it doesn't bother me anymore. And also when can't talk anymore. Sorry. Um, uh, I'm making finer yarn because maybe you saw it in the socks. I had to knit them with 1.25 millimeter needles because otherwise the fabric would have been too loose. So this sock yarn is actually a little thinner than regular 4-ply sock yarn. So yeah, I think I've reached the point where I have to take care not to spin my for sock yarn too fine, which is a funny problem to have. I didn't know you could have that. So we're still in the knitting segment, but I'm talking, it's all, intertwined because when you spin your own yarn and you want to talk about a project, you have to start with the spinning and then the knitting. So at least I'm not dying or carding or something. It's so maybe that's a good thing. I'm not quite sure. So what else do I have here? I I started. You might remember the Isolda knit along that was what's it called? Blooming Tide. And when I was finished with that shawl, I had quite a bit of yarn left over, and I decided that I wanted to make a t-shirt. Here it is. It's not finished yet. So this is the pattern is the Crazy Tea, and I forgot the designer. Sorry. And it is a crazy stripe cardigan, and the Crazy Tea has the same construction principle. So it's knitted in one piece. You start at the back neck as often, and then you do short rows and nice increases. So I find the sleeve cap pretty nice. So then you go to the round, you can see it. So the original pattern is for 2 colors, but I used 3. So this was spun by me. I used same merino silk that I used for those socks that I talked about just a moment ago. So this is in yellow and orange. And for the Gloamintide shawl, I needed 3 colors that would easily blend into each other and would be pretty close but distinct enough. So that's what I had, and that's what I used for the t-shirt. So for the t-shirt, I'm using 3 colors because I didn't have enough of just 2, and I like the effect pretty much. So what I did was I made one yarn that's 2-ply, both yellow. I made another one that's 2-ply and both plies are orange, but I made a third one that has 1 ply of orange and 1 of yellow. So I had to juggle the a bit around with the colors. So then you do stripes, and then after dividing for the sleeve, so you oh no, you take the sleeve stitches are put on waste yarn, you cast on more, and then you knit the rest of the body. And after that, you start doing short rows so that your stripes are not equal all around, but you have a side where there's like, I think it's 6 or 8 rows of stripe, and the other one has more than 20. And that looks pretty striking. And you end up with something that's a bit lopsided. And then in the end, you take the last triangle that you have created by doing all the short rows, and you do different short rows and end up with something that's level at the bottom again. And I think I've already finished the bottom. You know, yeah, the whole body is done. So next up, I have to decide what to do with the sleeves and how long to make them. I'm not quite sure. And I need to knit the neckband. But this is one of those almost done things. I think like a week of work and that will be completely finished. Okay, what else? Can't read my notes, sorry. Ah, I knitted a gauge swatch for a sweater that I want to make for my husband, but I'll tell you all about that when I'm talking about spinning, because that's mostly a spinning story. I haven't started the sweater yet. I crocheted one thing, but it was a big thing. I made another blanket. Here you can see it. I won't show you everything. It has these nice, slightly pastel colors. I'm not a pastel color girl, but thing is, when I finished the last crochet blanket using a pattern from Attic 24, I really love the blanket. I loved making it, but I felt a little bad because the whole thing is acrylic. Um, so I finished the pattern and I was like, okay, I've made 3 crochet blankets. We don't need any more crochet blankets or blankets, any blankets. So that should be enough. But it's just so nice to sit and crochet a nice cozy blanket, especially when it's starting to get cold again and the heating isn't on and you're all cold every morning, and then you sit there like, okay, just one more stripe, just one more stripe. So I wanted to make another one, even though we don't really need crochet blankets anymore. I don't think we actually needed the first 3 either. I made one for my son, and that one is one he could be using, but he doesn't like the acrylic because it's getting all this static electricity, and so he puts it over himself, and then he goes zip with and gets little electric shocks. He doesn't like that. Funny. So, and I felt a bit bad about all the acrylic because it's plastic. I try to reduce the plastic I'm using. And for me, yarn is not something that's really important and that I need. I could use natural materials, but the Attic 24 patterns with their gorgeous colors are usually connected with the yarn packs from the wool warehouse. And then I found that she has one blanket that's available not only in acrylic but also in cotton. And yes, I know cotton isn't good for the environment either, but yeah. So I bought this yarn pack, and the blanket is a cotton blanket, and it's called Summer Ripple. So summer blanket made from cotton. And once I got this yarn, I sat down, started crocheting, and didn't work on anything else until I was finished. So I finished this one in record time. It was so nice. Though I have to say, a cotton blanket, not quite as warm as the acrylic one or as the Sophie's Universe. I did that one in from wool. Though I have to say, the colors that I use, I'm not in love with those. I'm actually thinking of maybe one day making one of those gorgeous, colorful blankets by starting with undyed fiber. Yeah, that will be fun. We'll see. I'll tell you all about it when I do it, or if. So, and then I spun. I'll just start with the last thing on my list because I still have the project bag for the crazy tea on my lap, so I can show you the yarn. So the yarn leftovers that I had from that Gloamingtide knit along were not enough, so I had to spin more. I bought more of the fiber. That's the nice thing when you use commercial fiber blends in defined colors. You can get more if you need to. So I spun more of that and have already started knitting it into the t-shirt. And as you could see, I have still quite substantial balls of yarn left. So the length of my sleeves will also depend on how far I can get with the yarn I have. So yeah, this project has been lingering in the project bag for ages. I need to pare down my big projects. Like the scarf, I always think, oh, scarf's just an accessory. But really, scarves take a lot of yarn and a lot of time, and especially brioche, where you basically knit every row twice. So you progress is pretty slow with brioche knitting, but it's really squishy and nice, so I don't mind. But I can't start like 4 huge projects all at once. Well, I did, but they won't get finished in a month or so because all of these projects take time, and these days I only usually knit like half an hour or 1 hour in the morning, and on weekends I often knit for maybe an hour more in at night. So not that. I know it sounds like it's much. It isn't. Um, so the next spinning project is hmm. So this is Targi. It's moment. Ah, I keep saying moment because that's German. So it's just a moment. So I went to the Wollmarkt Vaterstetten in 2016, I think, and bought this Targi from Ätherische Öle. It's a rainbow that doesn't have blue, so it's red and yellow, and there are several shades of green, and I love it. And I decided to make a 3-ply, a chain plied yarn. And I had this tiny Turkish spindle by IST Crafts. It's really lightweight. I think it only has like 11 grams or something. And I used this for one project. No, I tried using it for a silk project because what was it? I think I was spinning silk hankies. I'm not quite sure. I didn't like the spindle at all. So I was just about to sell it so that somebody would use it. And then I decided to give him one more chance and to spin the targi on it. So spinning on a Turkish always takes a lot more time, I feel, than I'm usually spinning on my featherweight Bosworth. That spindle just zips along. And this one is very, very lightweight, but the arms of the Turkish spindle are pretty big. They're not big, they're just in relation to the whole weight and thing. So when it's empty, it turns slowly and the arms are dragging. So, but I found that when right now the spindle's pretty full, and now it goes fast. It's nice. And what I also like about it, I'll show you, is that so I have this bag for it that used to be a complimentary toiletry bag from uh, an air, how do you say? My father used to travel a lot for work and fly around the world when people usually didn't. And he got complimentary toiletry kits and bags several times, and this is one of them. So I have the fiber in there. The bag is a little padded, um, and then I push the shaft out, and I wrap one of these turtle things on the Turkish. So I leave the two arms and the wrapped yarn, and then I put it in the bag. And since the shaft is out, I can just put it on top flat, and the whole thing with the ball of yarn and the legs, arms, whatever, limbs of the Turkish spindle can go to the side, and it's all flat, and it can get a little squished without breaking. So I've been wanting to make a bag for the Turkish spindle, from, well, two bags for my two Turkish spindles for ages. I think maybe I don't need to, because when I put them away like that, usually the yarn in that turtle stays together very well, and it holds the arms together, and I don't think I'm in danger of losing the shaft, because this bag has a zipper. It's not my preferred method to close a project bag or a spindle bag, because you have to take care that the fiber isn't getting caught in the zipper. But yeah, it's nice, and this is usually this is my new purse spinning. So I've been carrying this around for years now, and so but once in a while I'll spin a little, and then people will get all googly eyed, like, what's she doing? Like at the beer garden or something, pull that out and like, hey, spindle. But eventually the whole thing will get done, and I'm not quite sure what I'll make with the yarn, because it's really, really bright. So my first impulse is shawl. We'll see. I have a lot of shawls, and these days I arrived at menopause and I'm having heat flashes, so I'm not wearing as many shawls as I used to. Not well, we'll see, and that won't last forever as well. So let me see. Next project is the North Ronaldsay. I'll tell you all in depth about that later, because that was my Tour de Fleece project. But I'll show you. I have North Ronaldsay in white, two bobbins full. These are the small baby bobbins, lace bobbins. I keep forgetting which is which. These are the little lace bobbins. They have the thick core, so there's not as much drag on the thread when you're spinning. So I have two of these. That's like 50 grams, I think. Not quite sure. Or 100. I think it's 50 grams of white. And I have another not quite full bobbin of brown. So I'll show you the fiber in a second. Moment. So this is the brown. This was a gift from someone I met on Reverie, actually, whom I met at the very first Reverie meeting in Germany. And she went to what was it? Some kind of yarn event in Scotland, I think, and brought me that fiber. So I have 400 grams of this North Ronaldsay, 200 in white and 200 in this oatmeal color. And I think I told you about this. Let me see. Yeah, I had this idea of making the Dathan pullover by Kate Davis from this fiber. So the plan is, you'll love this. I'll take those 400 grams of fiber. I'll make it into a fingering weight yarn, a 2-ply. I want to do a very small skein of all white and another very small skein of all oatmeal. And those will be the colors that I use as is. And the rest will be plied one ply of white with one ply of oatmeal, so they'll get this mild look. Then I will divide the resulting yarn into 14 parts, apart from the white and the oatmeal one, and I will dye it to match the Milwaukee Tweed color palette that Kate Davis sells through her, so has produced. So that will be interesting. So I was not quite sure if I should dye the fiber first and then spin it, or spin it first and then dye it, and then I decided to spin it first. And I will have to do trial dye runs. I'm thinking of dividing a 100-gram skein of sock yarn into 14 or something like it portions, and then trying to match the colors. So then this is the plan. I'll spin this, then I'll dye it, then I'll knit the Dathan pullover. Yeah, stay tuned. This project will probably last me another 5 years or so, especially since I'm not spending any time spinning at the moment. I think I haven't spun once all month, but I did spin quite a bit in July, and I'll tell you everything about it later. So the last spinning project I want to show you is this brown Corriedale. Pretty, well, unimpressive. It's just brown. This is a 3-ply. It's worsted weight-ish. It should have been more a DK weight, but it isn't. So this came about because my husband told me he doesn't have any sweaters. So the thing is, I made him 2 sweaters. One is like a what's it? It's not turquoise. It's a color that's a bit darker, teal. That's the word I was using. So he has a teal sweater that I made and that he loves, but the neckline, the neck is a bit too open. He'd like it to be higher. Maybe I already changed that. I'm not quite sure. But the thing is, the arms of the sweater are a little too long, and it's very loosely knitted, like all the stuff I make. And so the sleeves are a little too long, so they over time they lengthened, and now they are reaching like over his wrists. My husband is a guitar player and a guitar teacher, so having sleeves that are too long for him is really bothering him because you can't really play guitar with long sleeves. They tend to get caught. And like, I find myself, I love my sleeves to be a bit longer. Like, I have this Vivian cardigan and I wear that all the time. And the sleeves are um, on purpose, reach like the base of your thumb, but I keep pushing them back and like folding them back when I work because they are too long for that. So my husband complained the sleeves were too long, and I said, okay, I'll make them shorter. I mean, you can do that. Thing is, you actually have to do that. Um, I I did a podcast episode about my UFOs, and I think I showed the sweater, and shortly afterwards, I got him to try the sweater on and marked off the place where the sleeves should be. So at least one step closer. So that was the one sweater he has but doesn't wear because the sleeves are too long. And the second one was a National Knit a Sweater Month project where I spun and knitted this light gray sweater for him. And that one, um, hmm, my husband has, there are all these jackets with the zippers. My husband managed to get the neck of his sweater caught in a zipper and destroyed it. And then there was a place on one sleeve where it was fraying as well because he's pretty hard on his clothes and especially on the woolies. So that one was out of commission for a month, and but I repair it because I found some of the yarn, so I could, and I did some duplicate stitch, and yeah. So the gray sweater is back. He can wear it, but it's one wool sweater, and he likes to be really warm, and he likes these handmade sweaters, but he only has the one that he can wear and the one that I still need to alter. So since he asked for it, I thought, okay, I'll make him another sweater. And of course, I'd spin for it. So the brown corriedale that you just saw is the yarn that I made for his new sweater. And I decided to make the Hearthstone sweater by Isolde Teague. Surprise. It's all about Isolde all the time. And I already knit a gauge swatch before committing to spinning all the yarn. And so next step will be to start that project, but I have the Crazy Tea and the Bundled in Brioche sweater, and I want to finish those before starting another sweater project. Um, the, I think the yarn that I made is a bit too heavy for the pattern, but I think I can adjust it. The other thing is that didn't I didn't spin all the fiber. I try to see how far I can get with what I have, and then when I run out, I will just spin some more because I think I still have like almost 300 grams of corriedale left of the fiber, and if I don't need that, I can turn that into a different sweater for myself, like a lightweight yarn or something. So we'll see. I'll just start knitting. That might become my National Knit Sweater Month sweater because that's only like 5 weeks away. We'll see. I'm not quite sure. I didn't really want to participate in the National Knit Sweater Month thing this year because it's not much of a challenge, and I don't know. I've been I've stopped being so interested in doing challenges, by the way. I don't quite know why. So I need to get a move on because I need to, yeah, I have 20 minutes before lunch. So we'll see. Um, the project wardrobe. Yeah, I actually made progress. Yeah, cue the cheering pom poms and standing ovations because I know I wasn't actually sewing. I'm not doing much, but a little. So the black yoga pants are finished. I won't show them to you here on the video because hue black fabric, great. But they are finished. I might have to put elastic in the waistband, but right now I'm wearing them without, and I'm still round enough that they don't fall off. So things are good. They are fitting pretty well. So I had sewn them together and then found that they were too tight because I have become a bit wider. And so I ripped it all out and sew them together again with a smaller seam allowance, and now they fit, and I'm very happy. I also did all the mending because all those jersey dresses that I made keep ripping because the seams are not as elastic as the fabric, and so every time I pull them on and off and move, there's the danger of ripping a seam. Yeah, and then I was planning the Stasia dress, and I'll tell you all about that later because that was the topic of another show. And I cut the fabric for another plantain tee in burgundy with short sleeves. I already sewed together the shoulder seams, and I have attached the neckband, but it looks horrible because I stretched the fabric too much while sewing, and so it's like all wrinkly and ugly. So I have to take that out and reattach the neckband. The t-shirt I'm wearing right now is another plantain t-shirt. That was my prototype muslin, and I love it, and I wear it all the time. So I want to make more. So now, after an hour of talking, I come to all the topics that I talked about in past 9 shows. All past shows. So the first topic was Me Made May 2019. So for the first time ever, I participated in the Me Made May challenge. That has been started by Zoe from the So Something blog. Just Google Me Made May and Zoe, and you'll find her blog. I always thought that I couldn't participate because I didn't have enough me made clothes. And this year I thought, I'll just try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I wear something else. And that was such a fabulous idea. So I was always wearing the same things over and over. I own 2 swing dresses, this t-shirt, the skirt that I'm currently wearing, the denim skirt. It's a Miette skirt, another Miette skirt that has flowers, and I own a lot of me-made leggings and one other dress. It's called Martha dress by Milchmonster, and that's like an oversized hoodie that goes down to, I don't know, like a mini skirt. Um, so I only wore those things. Me made doesn't mean you have to wear all me made clothes. And for me, I wasn't counting my socks or cardigans because I'm wearing those all the time anyway. But I had like 6 outfits. I had the Martha dress that was for lounging around on the weekends. I had those 2 swing dresses. three outfits. And then I had the denim skirt with the t-shirt I'm wearing right now. That's a striped Plantain t-shirt. I had a hand-sewn top from Studio Alabama something that's purple, and that went with the denim skirt. And I had that other skirt, the flowery skirt that I usually wore with a store-bought t-shirt. Those were the outfits, everything I wore in May. And that was really interesting because I was like having potential new students come to my house to check me out and my teaching skills. And I have to say, I never wore the orange dress with the red dots to a first contact with a new student. And I was worried that I would like look a bit eccentric with all these skirts and like homemade clothes. But I didn't let that stop me, and have to say that since May, I have barely worn the jeans. I've I'm still wearing mostly handmade clothes, and that has given me new motivation to sew more because they're just so comfy and I love them. And um, I don't know. It's for me. It's also a statement that I don't want to like mm, support this globalization where poor people in Bangladesh are making my clothes because they don't earn as much as I would do, and all this thing. And yeah, I know it's not that easy, and buying fabric is also, yeah, so lots of complex issues at work here, but I love wearing my own clothes, the ones that I made, that were made for me, that fit me. It's just so nice. But that means that my the dresses get need mending more often because I'm wearing them more often. And so I had this huge pile of mending sitting there, and but one day I had just new trick of mine, really fabulous. So when I want to sew on the weekend, I usually want to start after lunch because in the morning I'm doing some form of exercise, and you know how it is with a teenager. He eats breakfast like just before lunchtime, and so the kitchen's always busy. And we have, so I don't have an extra room where I could sew. So usually I just use the kitchen table. So best time to sew is between lunch and dinner. So I was usually just sitting around, taking a break, and like scrolling through Instagram, and then it would be too late to start sewing. It's really just not worth it getting the sewing machine out. So what I did, and that works really well, is that after lunch I wouldn't take a break, but do the dishes right away, then clear everything from the table, and put the sewing machine bang in the middle of it. Even I find it too embarrassing to put that sewing machine back without having used it. So that was working very well, and I plan to do it again this weekend. So that was Me Made May. It was so great. I'm still not that much in love with sewing, but I'm very much in love with wearing hand-sewn clothes. So that's what I will be doing. So already getting fringes at my lips. The That's a German expression, by the way. Mund fusselig reden. Then the second, so that was episode 142, was about when is the best time for a major project. I had this idea of vision of the Daveland pullover, and then the question was, when do I start that? Because in the past, I just rushed into these projects, and then I was sitting there with all these major, huge monster projects, and felt overwhelmed because there were too many of them, and then you just push them to the back of the closet and never finish them, and that's no fun. So I kept thinking, do I start this Statham pullover thing? Do I really want to do this? I'm not quite sure if that pullover is something I will want to wear. What if things go wrong and I dye the yarn and it'll felt and look ugly and awful? Well, we'll see. I just started it anyway, but in that episode, I thought a lot about what I find attractive in major project. I love this feeling of challenge and rising to it, and having something that's a really huge thing, and I did this, and I love it. Like the time when I made that blanket for my father for his was it 70 something, fourth, fifth birthday, I think. Yeah, he'll be turning 80 next year. So I think I'll have to find something spectacular for that as well. But that was like, okay, I'll spin the yarn, I weave the blanket, I'll sew it all together, and it has a deadline. And I started it for Tour de Fleece, the spinning, and then I spent August weaving, and September is his birthday, and so that's always such a rush and fun and makes me happy. But I don't. I shouldn't forget that it also makes me totally exhausted, overwhelmed, anxious, cranky, confused. It's not all good. So I'm trying to only take on a certain amount of projects, not to start too many big things at the same time, because I can't forget that I'm still writing a novel and want to publish this trilogy sometime in the next few months. And I know I've been saying this since 2012, but it's a different trilogy this time. Um, and so I have to pace myself and not try it all at once. So, thing is, there will never be a good time to start a big project. I find that even times that look like they're a good time to start a huge project, like for me, summer break, that's 6 weeks off. Well, basically, I have a few students, but like one or two a week. That's not that much. So in theory, I have all this time, extra time for doing all the things, and yeah. But in real life, it's never there's never this time where you have like empty space before you. Well, I don't. I know there are people who feel their whole life is empty space and there's nothing to fill it, but that's not something that happens to me, and I'm guessing, but I think that doesn't really happen to people who are crafters and do a lot of do-it-yourself stuff. And well, because as knitters and spinners and all kinds, we always have something that we want to do and that we want to spend time on, not only watching Netflix or something. So I basically decided after I recorded that podcast about when is the best time to start a major project, just start it whenever, not too many at once. So there might be a queue. That's why I'm not buying all the fabric for my project wardrobe, even though I have a list of things that I want to make. But I know from experience that it takes me ages to get something done, and also that during that time, list changes. So I won't buy all the fabric that I want to use throughout the project. So for now, I have a list of 3 t-shirts and some other things that I want to make first. And for those, I have let me say, the fabric already here. And I'll finish those, and then I'll buy new fabric and do new project. Um, my Fitbit just told me, great job for doing 250 steps while sitting here. So Next. Oh, Project What Up. I didn't finish that. Sorry. So right now, I have the Q dress that's still almost finished. 2 years. And I have the plantain T-shirt that I'm in currently making. The yoga pants are finished, the black pair. And what else? There's fabric for a Dottie Angel frock somewhere in my uh, sewing project in progress box. Then next was episode 143 was spontaneous cast on. And that was when I decided I wanted this Komodo sweater. I took the yarn, I cast it on, and I finished it like in. And I don't think that I put it aside much. I just went for it. So, and that was interesting because I had all these plans. I wanted to make the sweater for my husband, and I was thinking about the Dathan pullover and all kinds of things. And the crazy tee was still, I don't know, at a point where I think I might have had to spin some more yarn. So I just pushed that all to the side and said, I'm making this cardigan because I want to and I can. And then I did. Um, so I just told you you shouldn't do that. Sometimes you it's all a question of balance. Sometimes it's about starting something spontaneously and just go with it, and then sometimes it's about the careful planning and just finishing one thing before starting the other. I don't think I do good with extremes, but now that I'm saying it, I don't think that anybody is good with extremes, even if they think so. I think some kind of balance is good, and being too strict is no fun. Being too spontaneous is no fun either. You think it will be. I know all these people that say, "Oh, I feel like it, so I'm doing it," and I tend to go that direction myself, but that often ends with you doing things that you didn't really want to in a way that you're not as happy with, and so balance. Okay, next 3 episodes. Let me see. Oh, I'm late. Sorry. Next 3 episodes was the Tour de Fleece. Tour de Fleece was a bit wonky this year because it didn't have the big project. So my intention was to finish the Corridale before the Tour de Fleece and then start the Ronaldsay and not Ronaldsay and spin all of that. But I knew that I didn't want to pressure myself and I didn't want this to be stressful, and so I just, well, like, I didn't manage to finish spinning the yarn for the sweater, the Corridale, the brown one. So I just said, okay, screw it. This will be my first Tour de Fleece project, and then the North Ronaldsay will be my second, and I'll just spin as much as I feel, and if it doesn't get finished, whatever. And so I didn't I didn't spin as much as I have in the past. I also found that sitting there watching the Tour de France is nice, but not if you're doing it every day for several hours. So it gets a bit boring after time just watching the landscape and listening to the commentators doing their thing. And I love all of that, but often it's like 5, 6 hours. And I mean, I have a life too, and I have a job that usually takes place in the afternoons at the same time as the Tour de France. So I only watched some, and I found that sitting in front of TV, spinning, I often would just take out my phone and scroll through Instagram, look at Reverie, then spin for 5 minutes, then wander off in my mind, not physically, just like check my email and such. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. Um, if that was a good thing or not. And I'm also not quite sure how I will proceed and if I will take part in the Tour de Fleece next year or not. But then I can decide that whenever. And I mean, it's perfectly okay to just declare Tour de Fleece spinning to be 15 minutes a day or something. So, and I find, as I said, I'm not that much into these major undertakings, huge, challenging projects at the moment. So, no, I won't set out to spin all the yarn for a sweater in 3 weeks or so. Not this time. So, this was a bit hmm, subdued. No, that's not the right word. Not quite as stressful Tour de Fleece this time. So I did, as I said, 3 episodes on it. One was about the anticipation. That was fun. And I said, oh, I think I can finish the corridor beforehand, and then I'll see how much of the North Run will say I will get done in these 3 weeks, and this will be so awesome. And then was the second episode right in the middle where things weren't quite as awesome again. And then there was a conclusion where I'm very happy with what I did. And yeah, was okay. Not something I say, yeah, I pulled through and I did it. 3 miles uphill through the snow, something like that. Okay, then episode 147 was Sewing Project Inventory. That was fun. I I have a box, one of those plastic boxes for all the sewing projects in progress. So, it used to be I started a sewing project, I finished it, and only then would I start the next one. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. So I pulled out everything that was in there, and that was so funny because there were things in there that I didn't remember. So there's like this sediment at the bottom, and that's the Dottie angel frog. Um, like it's this kirtle-like dress that I found really quirky and fun, and I started making a muslin um, out of an old curtain or something, and then I lost 20 kilos or something, and I don't know. I think I started the whole thing with the fabric that I was intending to use for real. Then I decided that I needed a muslin. In between, I lost all that weight, so I had to use a different size, and so it's a mess. There was also like the Q dress, the yoga pants, and the t-shirt in progress. And I pulled that all out and I showed everybody how I like when I cut out the fabric, I leave the pattern on top of it. So and I fold it together so you can see what is what, and then you can because I usually these days I don't take a weekend. I used to do that when I was in my 20s. I would say, okay, I'm making this whatever shirt. So then I'd start on Saturday morning and then I'll go all through until it was done, or maybe take a break for sleeping and then start again next morning. These days I sew a seam, then pack it up again, then like sew another seam, pack it away, or and then I like um, um, pin together two parts, put it away again. Takes ages, but it actually gets things done because these days I don't have a whole weekend where I do nothing else but sew. Um, Then I did an episode on spinning weaving yarn, and since I'm about to run out of time, I can't tell you all about it. Thing is, yes, you can spin weaving yarn. Yes, you can make it durable enough. And no, it doesn't take years and years and years. And if you want to know more about this, look into the book Spin to Weave. That's my foremost recommendation. Sarah Lamb is so nice and so practical, and she has been doing this for decades. And she has actually done experiments like what happens if I wash the yarn and then weave it with it? Or what happens if I don't wash it and weave it? And does it make a difference? All kinds of things. And it's so, so great. There were also a couple of other books that I recommended in that episode, and I'll link to that episode's show notes. And you will find that while usually the podcast is in German and the show notes are as well, the books that I recommended are mostly in English. So those of you who understand English can read these books too, if you can read, which I imagine you probably do. So, and then episode 149 is called Slightly Crazy Sewing Workaround. So, I've been having problems with getting my project wardrobe on the way, as you might have guessed. And I found that I was thinking about why that was. And mostly I think it's because sewing is getting the sewing machine out, and then I need like an hour or two to get started and then do something and then put it away again. And that feels like just this huge undertaking. Not that it really is. As you probably know, it just takes me 3 to 4 minutes to set up everything and then 4 minutes again to put it all away. That's not that massive a time commitment, but if you only have 20 minutes, you don't want to like move your sewing machine around and set everything up and then sew for 7 minutes and then put it away again. That's not a good use of my time. The other thing was that all those knit dresses that I made are constantly ripping. Seams are not flexible enough. And so I put the dress on and everything's fine. And next time I look, there's a hole in the seam on the side. This doesn't happen with this t-shirt, I think, because A, I sewed it with a zigzag stitch, and B, it it's not as for fitting as those. The swing dresses are really tight at the waist, and I love it. But when you pull them off and on over your head, they have to stretch a lot, and sometimes the seams don't stretch enough. So that's the one thing. And the other thing was, as I said, sewing always feels like such a huge project and I never get it done. And then I found that I am sitting on the kitchen bench every morning for 30 to 60 minutes knitting. And I could also sew by hand because that's, and I really loved making the, what's it called, that Alabama studio top. That was hand sewn. And the third thing, sorry. Sorry, I'm yeah, talking too much. The third thing was that I saw So Liberated had a post up with her Stasia dress or something. I was looking at her site, So Liberated Patterns. I love them. And I decided that I need a Stasia dress. Not quite sure why. I saw one and thought, this looks awesome. I want one. And then I thought, another knit dress to put on top of the to be sewing pile that never gets smaller. I thought, well, I could sew that by hand in the way that I made this top. Um, and I also had this brown jersey that I had intended to make into a t-shirt and a pair of yoga pants, but since I was wearing all these handmade clothes during May and found that I can easily wear leggings around the house, and I already have like 4 pairs of leggings, well, I don't really need 2 pairs of yoga pants. So I thought, I could take that brown jersey and make it into a Stasia dress. I could sew it by hand. Oh, that would be fun. And then I had the patterns plotted. Mm, and that it wasn't too expensive. I mean, like €1 something per pattern. That's okay, because printing those out and like gluing them together and cutting them out takes quite a bit of time. So that was good. And then I went and bought some extra thread because I was following the Studio Alabama method of hand sewing clothes, and they are using extra durable thread for this. Like it's called jeans thread in German. In German, it's like Jeansgarn or something. So that's a bit heavier, and you can't pull it apart. When if I'm sewing by hand, I'm often just taking that thread and rip um, yeah ripping it instead of cutting it. But you can't do that with that thread. You'll end up with your fingers bruised. So it doesn't quite cut through the finger, but it hurts. So I'm thinking those seams will be more durable than anything I can do with regular thread and the sewing machine. And so I want to just sew this dress by hand. And yes, that's pretty crazy workaround and will probably take ages. But who cares? My sewing projects always take ages. And this time I think I put the seam allowances to the inside, and I'll do a decorative stitch only at the neckband and the seams. And the rest of the seams I will just do a running stitch and then another running stitch to attach the seam allowance and make the seam more durable. That should go pretty fast. Yeah, I know, you're laughing right now. So, yeah, I'll tell you all about it, or maybe I won't, because I haven't started that project yet, and it will be a while, because I have all these other things that I want to finish first, and I don't want to rush into yet another major project again. So, this is it. Already a little late for lunch. Thank you for listening and having the patience with me for this very long episode. You can find all the links to things that I talked about on the creativemother.de homepage. And there's a little tab at the top that's Handgemacht Podcast. And there you can, if you click there, it leads you to another page where you can find all the podcast episodes. Also, you can send me an email if you want to Susanne at creativemother.de. Susanne is spelled Susanne. That's the German spelling. And then you can find me on Ravelry as Creative Mother, on Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest as Free Jazz Mama. And if you're so inclined, you can also support the podcast financially, like buy me a coffee or two. And since I don't buy me a tea, that's better. On Patreon under patreon.com/handgemacht. And that's everything, I think. Till next time, I wish you happy knitting. Ciao.